It's 1996 and the gaming world is on the brink of a revolution. Nintendo, a company already synonymous with redefining video games, is about to introduce something that will change the landscape forever. As gaming consoles transition from the realms of 2D into the bold new world of 3D, Nintendo launches Super Mario 64, and it's not just a game, but a pioneer. Super Mario 64 is set to unleash the full potential of 3D gaming, turning the abstract concept into a tangible playground. This isn't just another step in gaming, it's a giant leap. Super Mario 64 brings players into a universe where the worlds are round, movements are fluid, and the boundaries are as vast as one's imagination. The castle doors are open, the paintings are portals, and each jump Mario makes could lead to a new discovery. Join us today as we dive into the making of Super Mario 64, exploring how Nintendo crafted these enchanting 3D landscapes and how this game set the standard for every 3D platformer that followed. It's not just a journey through levels, but a journey through gaming history itself. And it's also our 200th episode, so we'll take some time to talk about that as well. So grab your wing cap and let's take a leap into the world where Mario first stepped out of the flat and into the 3D as we take today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello, and welcome to the 200th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people that have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies and people that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are celebrating a major milestone, not just in the world of gaming, but also our very own podcast, because it's episode 200. And what a better way to celebrate than diving into the game that launched a million thumb blisters, Super Mario 64. Released to the world in 1996, it transformed the landscape of gaming with its groundbreaking 3D gameplay and just fantastic detail. It was revolutionary. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who is still trying to figure out if jumping into paintings will actually take him to another world. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, have you found anything interesting lately?
Just these really strange mushrooms, Dave. They just made me sick. That's all.
They have just made you sick. Can you tell me what the mushrooms look like?
They're red and white.
They are red and white. That is not a mushroom that you're supposed to eat. I'm sorry to break it to you.
Well, damn.
And also joining us is a man who thinks that every problem can be solved with a well-timed ground pound. He's
Let's go!
a six-time returning guest, Ryan Shepard. Ryan, how's all that pounding working out for you?
It's me, Ryan Shepard.
Yeah, we've covered that. That's we're just prompting. Okay. Great. He's got the ground pound, just like Nintendo 64, limited Mario vocabulary. I love it.
I'm a Luigi. I'm gonna win.
We got Luigi. Luigi's not even in this one.
Okie dokie.
Alright. Is Luigi in any of them? Was he in the remake? He was in the remake.
He did guest star in the DS port of Mario 64.
Yep, because didn't the DS port start with Yoshi and then you got to unlock all the others?
Yes, including Mario and I believe Wario was the other one.
Very, very nice. All right, well, let's dive right in. We got a lot to talk about. It's episode 200. But before we get to all the celebration of today's topic, Rob, what else happened during this week in gaming history?
Well, on June 23rd, 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog was released by Sega, marking the debut of one of the most iconic characters in video game history. Developed as Sega's answer to Nintendo's Mario,
Ooh.
Sonic was designed with speed in mind, featuring fast paced gameplay that was revolutionary at the time. Set in the colorful world of Green Hill Zone, players control Sonic, who is a blue hedgehog with the ability to run at supersonic speeds, as he attempts to thwart the evil Dr. Robotnik, who plans to steal the Chaos Emeralds for world domination. The game stood out for vibrant graphics, catchy soundtrack, and smooth scrolling mechanics, which
Mm-hmm.
highlighted the Sega Genesis's hardware's capabilities. Sonic the Hedgehog not only became a mascot for Sega, but also launched a franchise that remains beloved by fans around the world, significantly impacting the platformer genre and the broader gaming culture. And we celebrated 30 years of Sonic back in episode 43. Let's go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. 30 years. Ryan, you like Sonic? Or are you strictly a Mario guy?
I came to Sonic late, so yeah, kind of grew up on the Nintendo stuff, but did come to appreciate Sonic. Once I was able to take the blinders off.
Take the blinders off. That's a good way to put it. And then you got to go supersonic.
Well, it's true. Sega did what Nintendo don't.
That is true. That's very true. All right, what else we got?
On June 23rd, 2000, Deus Ex was released, developed by Ion Storm and published by Eidos Interactive. The game was renowned for its integration of first person shooter mechanics with complex role playing elements and a highly interactive cyberpunk themed world. Deus Ex is set in a dystopian future where players control JC Denton, an agent equipped with nanotechnological augmentations, navigating a world rife with conspiracy, terrorism, and moral ambiguity. The game's open ended gameplay allowed for multiple solutions to problems, extensive character customization, and branching story paths based on player decisions, all of which were groundbreaking at the time. Praised for its deep narrative and player freedom, Deus Ex is often cited as one of the greatest video games ever made, significantly influencing the design and storytelling of future action RPGs and immersive sims. And we learned all about its story back in episode 147. So if you want to learn about Deus Ex and its creator Warren Spector, give that episode a listen.
Good old Warren Spector.
Indeed.
All right, what else you got?
Well, on June 24th, 2002, Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem was released exclusively for the Nintendo GameCube, developed by Silicon Knights and published by Nintendo. This game is notable for being one of the few psychological horror titles in Nintendo's catalog and for its unique sanity effects feature, which plays mind games with both the character and the player. Set across different eras, players control multiple characters who are connected through an ancient book called the Tome of Eternal Darkness.
Oh.
As characters encounter monsters and uncover dark secrets, their sanity meter decreases, triggering various disturbing and disorienting effects, such as hallucinations and fourth wall breaking occurrences that simulate technical glitches or dramatic changes in the game environment. Eternal Darkness received critical acclaim for its innovative use of sanity effects, deep narrative spanning multiple time periods, and its mature, intricate storytelling. It remains a cult classic for its unique approach to the horror genre, blending psychological elements with traditional survival horror mechanics.
If you're still with us this time next year, we haven't run you away. That's what we'll be talking about. I put it on our 2025 schedule.
Woo! Schedule's already out. Let's go.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Schedule's not out.
You heard it, Ryan. He said it's out.
Exclusive for Patreon subscribers.
Oh, well, we just covered that, so moving on.
All right, last up for this week in gaming history, on June 26, 2012, Spec Ops The Line was released, developed by Jaeger Development and published by 2K Games. This third person shooter is distinguished by its intense narrative, inspired by Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, set against the backdrop of a catastrophically sandstorm ravaged Dubai. The game follows Captain Martin Walker and his squad on a mission to locate the presumed lost U.S. Army Colonel John Conrad and evacuate survivors. Spec Ops The Line stands out for its psychological depth, morally complex choices, and the serious consequences that choices have on the story and characters. Praised for its critical take on the nature of violence and the ethical dilemmas faced in warfare, the game challenges players to reconsider the typical glorification of military action seen in many shooters, making it a notable and provocative entry in the genre.
Was it though?
You would have to tell me, Dave. I never got to play that one.
Ryan, did you play Spec Ops?
In 2012, I did not play Spec Ops: The Line.
Ugh, it has such a good twist in the story. It's fantastic. It's a really good game.
Is
Really,
it on
really
the
good game.
2025 schedule?
It is not in the 2025 schedule. I have not considered doing that one, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, that would
2026?
affect the Eternal Darkness
Yeah, exactly. It'd be the
episode.
same week.
Come
Ryan,
on, Ryan.
did you play Eternal Darkness?
I played the ever loving crud out of Eternal Darkness.
Come on, you gotta tell me that's worth an episode, isn't it?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I saw that date, and when I see a game I like, I look at my spreadsheets to see if I filled in that week yet, and I hadn't. I was like, Eternal Darkness, it is.
It is a fantastic game. The developer Silicon Knights does have a really interesting story behind it.
Yep, you
And
got it.
yeah, I mean,
All correct things. I was like, that there, my friends, is a good episode just waiting to happen. So
I could probably cast a spell from Eternal Darkness just going off memory.
yeah, I really, really like that. I played the crap out of it too.
Ulyath, Pargon, Shaturga.
I do not remember it that well. I'm glad you do.
He's speaking gibberish. I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with that, we're not here to talk about Eternal Darkness. People just have to tune in next year. And today, we're talking Super Mario 64.
That's a plug and a half. Tune in next year. So, the idea to do a 3D Mario game came to the mind of video game developer Shigeru Miyamoto while he was working on Star Fox. He saw the models that they were able to make with the special FX chip on the Super Nintendo, and he thought that he could use the same technology to do a game that recreated, as he put it, the entire world in miniature trains. In a 1996 Nintendo Power interview, he said, "When I saw what could be done with 3D modeling on the Star Fox game, I knew we could do so much more." And that was kind of the start of their guiding philosophy. You know, initially they had really considered doing this as a SNES like FX title with the chip, and then that was about the time that it was time for the transition over to the 64-bit era, the Nintendo 64. Now, Miyamoto didn't come out exactly and say like their guiding philosophy was do so much more, but you can see bits and pieces of this as you dive into some of the other interviews that he gave on Mario. In Super Mario 64, he said in that same Nintendo Power interview, "I wanted to include more details. The ideas we use in the game come from real life, but they may not seem so. In the process of including an idea in a game, we often change it many times before reaching the final version. For instance, during the development of Super Mario 64, Mr. Tezuka got an idea about putting his wife in the game. His wife is normally very quiet, but one day she exploded, maddened by all the time he spent at work. In the game, there is now a character who shrinks when Mario looks at it, but when Mario turns away, it will grow large and menacing. The booze."
Oh.
This is the image he got from his wife, and we thought it would be great in the game.
Drawing on life experience. That's great.
Drawing on life experience to make the booze. The In that interview, the interviewer followed it up with, "Does she know?" And they both laughed and said, "Yeah, she knows." So,
Well, she didn't. She does now.
yeah, she does exactly. Yeah, she does now. You know, at this point, early on in development, the Nintendo 64 was still known as Project Reality. It was a project where Silicon Graphics, who had been providing workstations to Nintendo as early as Donkey Kong, that's kind of where that relationship started. And then, that's how Rare did their fun stuff with that. Silicon decided that they wanted to get into the console business. And so they started to shop around their idea for a console with their technology. They shopped it to Nintendo, they shopped it to Sega. And obviously, because we know why we're here today, eventually it was Nintendo that picked up on it and ran with it. But this early on, it wasn't the Project Ultra, it wasn't the Ultra 64, the Nintendo 64. It was just known as Project Reality. That was the beginning of it. And Project Reality at this point, they were these literal supercomputers because that's what Silicon Graphics did. Initially, they were these things called Onyx workstations, and they were literally $250,000 supercomputers that were basically made up to emulate what the console would be with its final specifications. So when they started making stuff for the Nintendo 64, they didn't actually have the emulation boards or the prototypes. They literally had in what would today's money be $520,000 supercomputer that was basically a Nintendo 64 emulator, which is really kind of interesting if you think about it. That's the beginning of all things.
That yeah.
So they're making games and trying to figure out how to make things work on these supercomputers. And really, they start out with making Mario move like Mario. You're moving from 2D into 3D. But one of the things that everyone really likes about Mario is his sense of movement. Mario feels good to play as. And they had to work initially at the concept, how did we transition from 2D into 3D and making that work well. So they basically started in just an open room. That was their initial design. It was made up basically of Lego blocks, they say. And they kept throwing their models of, initially it was Mario and Luigi in there so they could prototype the movement of the players. And what felt best to the team was a model by which the area around Mario's hips act as a big joint that controls the way in which his body moves. He accelerates, they decelerate, they lean, they turn. Everything guides from the hips. In an interview found in a Super Mario 64 strategy guide, Miyamoto noted that in the Mario games up until now, we've carefully crafted every stage and level down to the individual pixel. Take jumping, for example. Implementing jumping in 3D is really difficult. In earlier Mario games, we were able to measure the number of pixels exactly. Mario could jump and know exactly what was possible. But this time around in 3D, we had to design the level so as long as your jump was close enough, you'd make it, because it was simply too hard for the player to judge otherwise. Isn't that interesting to think about? Like, we had to make it so it was close enough. Do we think that that's changed over the years? Do we think that they still do that in 3D, or do we feel that like 3D is much tighter now than it was back when?
I think it. I mean, I think that same philosophy is true in a lot of games. Even some really hardcore platforming games like Celeste. That's 2D admittedly, but even they kind of kind
Have a
of
little bit of give. They have a little bit of
yeah,
give because
they
it's
put the
not
thumb on the
fun.
scale.
It's not fun when
Yeah,
you don't.
exactly.
When you don't, then you have Dark Souls, and we know how I feel about Dark Souls.
Yeah. Yep. That's yeah.
So originally, all the programming and their initial movement was all done with keyboards because, again, as Super Mario 64 was being developed, the Nintendo 64 was being developed as well. So that team that was working on Nintendo 64 was prototyping their controllers. And there's this notion that maybe Mario 64 influenced Nintendo 64 or otherwise, and that's not the case. I found various interviews where people were like they were two separate teams. They developed concurrently. Yeah, we gave them feedback and everything, but it's not like one was specifically influencing the other. It was really just a team environment where we took each other's feedback. So, um, you know, Miyamoto was the director on this game, but he was producing other titles. This was actually the very last game. I don't know if you know this. This is the last game he actually acted as director on. Ever since Mario 64, he has been strictly a game producer for Nintendo and then, a consultant eventually. But this was the last game he directed. And even though he was working on like three things at a time, including because they developed the Ocarina of Time concurrently, which is ironic because we talked about how when they were making Mario for the Nintendo Super Mario Brothers, they were making The Legend of Zelda too, so those were developed concurrently. So Nintendo has that theme when they're making launch titles; they're almost always going to be a Mario and a Zelda and be made at the same time, with Miyamoto somewhere in the mix. So just know that.
I never thought of that, but thinking about it, yeah, that's pretty seemingly the case.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So he was. It's said that he spent most of his time here. He was really invested in Super Mario 64 and spent a lot of time on it. Working on it and constantly giving suggestions and playing with the prototypes of the game and the controllers and everything. So this was his focus by every account I could find. So I read an interview with a developer that had said in the beginning they were playing this game with actual modified Sega controllers
Nice.
that were
Wow.
plugged into this Onyx workstation. And then as the new prototypes of the Nintendo 64 controller came out, they really just started to litter the lab. One described one of the early controllers as literally just a modified Super Nintendo controller that they had added a Z button on the back and a central stick in the middle of. With that being said, in the end, there was one account where someone said we probably had over 100 different prototypes of that Nintendo controller laying around our lab.
Jeez.
So they worked really hard at getting that right, whether or not you like it or not. I don't know. It's no for its time it was good, but I think in hindsight there were better ways to do it now because no one
I
else
would
did.
argue that the forever scarred palms of children around the world, now adults, would argue against that, Dave, but that's just me.
Ryan, are you a fan of the controller?
It was revolutionary for its time. And it has its place in history, and I believe it firmly belongs, in history. Um,
Yeah, me too. Me
I
too.
mean,
I mean, I don't want to bash it. I agree with you. It was a good controller for its time, but there's a reason why they don't make controllers like that anymore. Like there are clearly, like I said, better ways to do it. So
humanity has evolved. We no longer have three hands,
that's it. That's right.
and yeah, so I think you can say there's not a lot of innovation in the modern gamepad design, but it
No, there's not.
functionally work. It
There's
functionally works.
there's no there's really no innovation. Like now that you say that, I think about it. Like where are they gonna go? There is literally nowhere to go. Like we have it. Like we pack it up and go home. We have it. This works. So
4K Rumble.
oh no, 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 no. Next thing you're gonna see like the biggest controllers ever, and only because the entire thing's gonna be a rumble motor. We're gonna go back to the old Xbox controllers, and it's literally just gonna be a rumble motor. So bad that the controller's gonna like shake out of your hand. They're gonna be like, it's revolutionary, and a new gameplay mechanic is literally like, can you hold on to it enough so it doesn't shake out of your hand?
The
So
new the new Call of Duty, you'll have to reload by picking the controller up off the floor.
It's the best. With that being said, despite there being over 100 different controller prototypes, basically they said that once they had the one, it fit their control scheme perfectly. So they all kind of did work together and did a good job. So with the movement and control scheme out of the way, their next order of business was to work on the camera. They said to have spent another couple months just playing around with different camera views and just figuring out how to make that work. At one point settled on a they had settled on a fixed path camera that took on an isometric point of view. But after a little while, that was deemed too close to the 2D style that they were trying to move away from. So they decided to experiment again with a free ish camera. And throughout the entire process, there was literally one guy whose job was just to work on the camera. They had taken him, he said to have been a great, great programmer. They took him from Star Fox 2, which of course never really made the light of day back when. And his whole job was just camera work, making sure the camera could move and making sure it swung, making sure that it avoided the scenery, because that's what makes it a good camera, all that good stuff, you know? So, um, and with the fundamentals out of the way, it really came time to design the game itself. You know, in one of those strategy guide interviews, Miyamoto was asked if they drew out their models beforehand when creating the level maps. And he said, actually, no, not at all. There would only be some concept art sketches and brief notes or memos. For example, I would talk with course director Yoichi Yamada about an idea for a level. Then he'd make some quick sketches of it. Yamada isn't an artist, but he draws weird stuff. And then, you know, it notes that he laughed there. So, you know, Miyamoto's got a sense of humor. Then we look over those and talk more, like, oh, there should be a snowman here, or oh, there should be a rock there. And those key elements of the level would be written down. Yamada and the other levels designers would then refer back to those notes while designing the levels with our software development tools. And when he was asked to elaborate on this process, he said, it was kind of like sculpting a diorama out of clay. First, you make a very general shape. For example, with the King Bomob stage, for our initial general design, we'd have that river in the middle of the map, which you cross to reach the boss area, which is atop a big hill that you have to wind round and round as you ascend it. But say we put Mario in that map and we move him around. We realize that the river flows too fast and it sweeps him away, and that's too hard for players. So we swap that river out for a desert valley like Death Valley. So the form remains the same, but gradually we add more and more ideas, changing the map as we go. So clearly the level design was iterative, right? They did what good game designers do. They start out with an idea and they play test it, they take that feedback and they modify it, modify it. Not exactly reinventing the wheel here, huh?
Not at all.
But I will tell you, there was something interesting that came up during that interview. As part of that same interview, Miyamoto had said during that development process that they did something that they never done before. He said, we had children play test the game. We had a row of about 10 middle schoolers and had them play around on that King Bomob stage for half a day while we observed from behind. My child was one of them, actually, but seeing him try dozens of times over and over to get up this unclimbable hill, as a parent, I couldn't help but think, geez, does this kid have any brains?
That's awesome.
Afterwards, we asked the children what they thought of the game, and they said it was fun and that they wanted to play it again. So there you go. They play tested it with middle schoolers, including Miyamoto's son. I wonder if he ever caught flack for that. So they make the levels, and you know, of course, they're working against a deadline because Nintendo 64 launched. So of course, there's always going to be things that you know hit the cutting room floor. They talked about adding more animals. They talked about having an animation. You know, in it, Mario can pick up a rabbit. They wanted to have an animation where Mario could toss the rabbit by its ears, but they couldn't. They couldn't find the time to make it.
Boo. Should have
They
done
Missed
thought,
that.
opportunity. Missed opportunity.
I know, right? There were more tools they wanted to put in, toys, things. They talked about modeling a car for Mario, which I guess we didn't see until Galaxy, huh? No, Sunshine? Galaxy. Galaxy. We didn't see a city till Galaxy. Am I right?
Are you thinking of Odyssey?
I am thinking of Odyssey. Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate that. I could see the stupid city in my brain, and I kept wanting to say Galaxy. And it's not Galaxy, because Galaxy was just planets.
that's right.
Odyssey had the city in it. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could kind of call the places in Sunshine a city.
Did it have cars?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's
Could
how I
have a
started.
boat, like a
It did.
submarine boat.
It did have a boat.
There were some boats, but no, it's got nothing on New Donk City.
You right. You right.
So they had all this stuff that they wanted to add, they couldn't add. But probably the most famous thing that they had to remove from the game was a cooperative mode. So if you'll recall, when I started this tale, I mentioned that initially they were playing around with models of both Mario and Luigi. They had Luigi in the game for most of the development process. They had
I knew
intended
it.
right, exactly. They had intended on there being a cooperative mode. As you know, we're here. It came out in June, and they had him in the game until February. About 4 months before the game came out, they realized they didn't have enough time to finish the mode. There was still too much work to do, and they cited memory restrictions. So basically, they couldn't figure out how to fit it properly with everything else they wanted to do. So they nixed the concept and they pulled Luigi out of the game, at least out of a playable mode.
I remember reading in Nintendo Power magazine a rumor that if you could somehow get onto the roof of the castle
Right.
in Mario 64, you would find Luigi up there. And I tried for many, many hours and I never got there.
No, I would guess you wouldn't have gotten there, would you? What was the glitch that was in the castle? And there's speed
Which
running.
one?
Right. There's a speed running glitch. There's a lot of speed running glitches in the castle,
Say
aren't
the
there?
back jump up the
Yeah,
stairs.
yeah.
Yeah.
The backwards long jump is big time used in the speedrunning community.
And lastly, because we're talking about time, when Super Mario 64 was first shown as a playable prototype in November of 1995 at Nintendo Space World, it featured 32 courses. At the time, the game was about 50% complete. Texture mapping was only about 2 or 3%. They really had only started there, but they had 32 courses. The team had hoped to create more. They talked up more. That's what you see in some early articles about it. They were looking to create up to 40. But due to some of the same constraints, time and memory, the final version of Super Mario 64 has only 15 courses, which is kind of like they got rid of half the game, literally half the game.
They got the
Yeah,
perfect setup
it's
with the whole castle being kind of an overworld. It's really easy. Just throw another portrait on there, and there's your new level.
That's right. That's right. That's true, but it didn't happen. All the portraits fell off the wall and were smashed on the floor. And they
poor
said, and
portraits.
and they said no paintings for you. So with everything in place, Super Mario 64 was released in Japan, June of 1996 as a launch title for the Nintendo 64. That would have made it November of 96 in North America, because I believe that was the launch date for Nintendo 64 here. And it was pretty obvious immediately that it was going to be a game changer for the video game industry. Hey, Rob, do you know what else has changed the game over the years, just like Super Mario 64 did?
What's that, Dave?
Podcasting. It's never been easier to share your voice with the world than it is now, and our friends at Zencaster have created an all-in-one podcasting suite to help you do just that.
With Zencaster, recording a podcast is super easy. Everyone logs in using their web browser, and you just start recording a high quality podcast right away. Even allows you to record up to 4K video with your guests, and thanks to Zencaster's multi layered backups, you always have the highest quality recordings, even when someone's connection is unstable.
You never have to worry about how you sound. Zencaster's post-production process makes us all sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes all those ums and ahs, takes out any awkward pauses in the conversation. You can set the right podcast loudness, reduce background noise. You can do this all with a click of a button.
And even if the thought of podcasting overwhelms you because you think you need tons of different tools and services, relax. Those days are over. With Zencaster's all in one podcasting platform, you can do all of that editing Dave mentioned and distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple, and major destinations, all from one place.
All from one place. So, if you'd like to start your own podcast, or maybe you have one that you're looking to take to the next level, we've got a deal for you. Go to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, one word, memory card lane, to get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan.
Sign up for Zencaster today and experience the same ease in producing your own high quality podcast as we do each week. Go out and share your ideas with the world.
It's so easy. I was inspired to make a poem about Zencaster.
Were you
Let's hear
really?
it.
Let's hear it.
In a world of voices, clear and bright, video game stories weaved day and night, there stands a tool so fine, so true. Zencaster, we all turn to you.
That was fantastic. I think that's the commercial right there.
That's it. That's the plug. We're gonna put that in every time now. He never has to listen to it because he's a Patreon subscriber, but he's always gonna be there. Yeah, buddy. Good job. Bravo. That was great.
That was fantastic.
All right. Let's talk about Super Mario 64. Retro Retrospectively, we look back at it now and consider it to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Any disagreements?
Foundational, you know, game in the 3D design space. Yes, there were 3D platformers, to some degree, prior to this, but none that had the polish, none that had the finely tuned platforming controls. And, when you think about a successful transition of a famous franchise from a 2D to a 3D, Mario and Zelda, both pulled it off spectacularly.
They they did.
It's not just running and jumping. There were so many, new things that they had to add into Mario's repertoire: the ground pound, the long jump, the wall kick. None of those existed for Mario before this game.
It's true. A lot of mechanics. Uh Rob, did you play this first on Nintendo 64?
Yes, I did get my start on this game in the 64 era.
You gotcha. Have you beaten it? Have we all beaten it?
Yes,
Yeah.
a time or
Ryan?
two.
120 stars.
120 stars, me too. I
Wow, look at
know,
you, Mr.
right?
Fancy Pants.
We've all finished it. I distinctly remember my first experience with this game, but Ryan, do you?
Yes, Christmas Day.
Christmas
Christmas
Day.
Day,
So you
1990, I guess six it would have been.
so you got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas of 96.
Not me specifically, but the family, yes.
Okay, I know how that goes. That's how my Nintendo got into the household. So
That's right.
Christmas Day, you guys open Nintendo 64, and of course you have this game with it, and
Yeah.
that's how y'all spent Christmas.
Plug it in, boot it up. And, prior to this, all the kind of game experience in the household was, Super Nintendo and things like that, which, had nice, 2D graphics. But, I remember, a family member said, it looks like a movie, which
I
is,
know.
which is funny, in this year. But, thinking about almost 20 years ago, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Yeah. Was it just you and the siblings, or did your parents partake at that point?
The 3D era is when they noped out. Yep.
When they decided enough was enough.
Like, what's this circle thing? Nope. I'll just watch.
Well, the camera controls probably scared them off.
Yes, that was another layer of something that's been improved on the later Mario games, but for the time it was the best 3D camera we'd had on a platformer.
It worked for its time, I'll say that.
It did. We never had a Nintendo 64 in the house at that point. We rented it from the video store. And
What's that, Dave?
what's the video store? Blockbuster? What's Blockbuster?
It's like a less convenient Netflix.
At one, it sure enough is. At one point, boys and girls, there was no internet, and you used to have to go to a store and get these cassette tapes that had your movies on them and your video game cartridges. You could rent them and pay like $4 a day to have them for the. I wasn't. It was like $4 a day or something like that. I think it was $3 a day or $5 for 3 days or something weird like that. And
Yeah, it sounds right.
you could rent games for the weekend. And we did not have the newfangled systems, but whenever we did good, these are things that you don't appreciate until you're older and you realize what it took. You know what I mean? Uh, Dad would rent video game systems, and I would do nothing for an entire weekend than play games on brand new systems because I only had them for the weekend. You know,
You
so
know, thinking about that now, it's actually really cool because then you can decide if a console is worth. Like, yeah, you could go to a friend's house and see if you enjoy the console, but like for people that didn't have that because wasn't as available to have a console, that was revolutionary.
it
And
was
honestly, it's kind of
great.
sad that it's not still a thing because, like, I mean, do I want a PS5? Sure, but like, am I willing to spend the money? No. So if I could rent one for a weekend, fuck yeah, I would.
I I mean, as a kid, because '96 I would have been 12. I mean, I absolutely looked forward to like that was the coolest thing ever. Like calling and hey, you got in Nintendo 64? Okay, we'll be there in 2 minutes, and then literally telling Dad to like race up the street so we get there before anyone else gets there, and getting so freaking excited when they finally had it. You know,
Oh yeah,
uh,
no, I didn't remember because I used to rent the Nintendo 64 from Family Video.
that's where yeah, same. That's where we got it from. Just different eras.
Yeah,
It was a brand new system when I got it. So,
and
oh
and with that video store motif, you were able to, try out games and, like, buying a video game, 60, $70, $1996.
yeah,
That's a lot of money in
I
today's
know.
dollars.
Isn't it funny how we
Yeah,
think about that? How everyone's like, "Oh my god, $70 is so much for a game." When we were paying that back in the '80s and '90s, and that
yeah,
like,
that was a lot. And
yeah,
were they
to
that
find
much? I
out,
thought
hey,
they were only like 40 or 50.
oh no, no, yeah,
there was a time
they,
period in which they dropped to 50 for a while, but in the Nintendo and Super Nintendo era, if you, I mean, literally go Google like Toys R Us catalog for '96. Those Nintendo 64 cartridges, I think, were $70 on launch, weren't they?
yeah, and there were also other, like I remember seeing Final Fantasies, right, for $10 more,
Yep.
things like that. So
Yeah, it really wasn't until I'd say PlayStation era that they settled on $50 for games. Prior to that, the cartridges, because there were different cartridges with different chips and different memory in them. And that would cost like the FX games for the Super Nintendo were like 80, $90 at times, if I remember correctly, because they had that special FX chip. So um, the cost of games was way different back then. And then again, PlayStation with CD-ROM. CD-ROM kind of changed that landscape, and I mean, and now we know where we are now. So, for sure, absolutely, they were absolutely that expensive. That's why we rented. We couldn't afford those.
I always thought it was just because we wanted to try them out before playing.
No, the only reason why we have a big collection from that era is every time the video games sold their
Yep.
used copies, we bought the crap out of them. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah.
every time I would go in there, I would go to the for sale thing, and I mean, I got some good games. I also got some of the absolute worst trashy games because they were so cheap. When the video store got rid of them. I mean, most of the collection I have from because I have the Super Nintendo stuff from that time still have the video store stickers on them, which I just love. I just love them. So, yeah, definitely just love them. I very much remember. I mean, I was talking about renting for the weekend, but I very much remember my first experience with Nintendo 64 because it always sticks out in my head. The first time I ever saw Mario in 3D was walking into a Best Buy. Remember how they used to have that giant screen in the center of the store that wrapped around the entire center, like it was circular? So anywhere in the store you could go, you would see what someone was playing on the video game console that was in the circle in the middle of the store. Do you remember that at all?
Nope.
Ryan, do you remember that? The way they used to lay them out?
I do not remember that.
What do you remember? I guess you probably remember the era when they just had the large wall of TV screens on the back wall.
There's that, and then also, you got the TV kind of up high with the controller sticking out, and if you crane your neck about 90 degrees, you can kind of look up and see what you're playing.
Well, they had that. That was the console itself. But they had at ours. They had a giant screen when you came in, and I'm talking like it was probably 9 different large screens put together. Like at the time, it was huge, and they had it so it was literally like four. Like you could see it. There was one facing every direction of the store. So literally, the gaming consoles were set up in the center, and then whatever someone was playing on the showcase system was broadcasting onto those screens at the top. So the first time I ever saw Mario in 3D is I walked into a Best Buy, and it was the intro screen where it's Mario's face, and it was just chilling up on that screen. It was chilling up on that screen at Best Buy, and I remember getting to watch someone play, like racing over to it and getting to watch someone play that game when they were setting up the demos, like as they were leading up to the launch. Uh, so mine was Best Buy. So there you go.
Should we
Fun.
talk favorite levels?
I don't know if I have one. What do you like?
I got a top four,
Okay.
not in particular order.
Okay.
Shout out to Bob on Battlefield, kind of the first level, and just iconic, and lots of fun stuff there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Dire Docks, with
Yes.
the
Yeah.
submarine, and just the wonderful music in that level. Um, then kind of rounding at the top, the kind of the Mount Rushmore would be Shifting Sandland. In the desert with the pyramid,
Yeah, that one pissed me off.
and oh
Pissed me
yeah,
off.
no, big time. Then I gotta give shout out to Big Boo's Haunt. Uh,
Oh
just
God.
very different level. I cannot possibly put freaking Rainbow Road or whatever the level is where you're on the flying carpet. That level
No,
pissed me off so
those ones
much.
suck. But the penguins, the racing the penguin always sticks out in my head.
Oh
So
yeah, cool mountain.
yeah,
I'd say that's top five.
yeah, cool mountains up there for me. It was so frustrating, but I felt such a big sense of accomplishment when I finally did it. So cool mountains got to be up there for me. Uh, yeah, for sure. Rob, you got any favorites?
Yeah, I'm with Ryan on Dire Docks. That was fantastic.
It was, yeah.
I also I do like Cool Mountain. I think that's fun, but I do remember Big Boo's Haunt was just the most terrifying thing as a kid. Like it just scared the piss out of you, man.
Now I'm never gonna look at it again because I'm just gonna think of a screaming wife every time I see those boos. So I had no clue. That was such a fun anecdote to find in the middle of a strategy guide. Literally, I think that's where that came from, was a strategy guide interview. And it's like, well, this is neat. So that's a whole lot of fun. That's a whole lot of fun. I think that there is no doubt that this is one of the greatest video games of all time. It certainly came at a very influential moment as the industry was transitioning from 2D to 3D. I mean, and it did it in such an impressive manner that it became the golden standard by which everyone else had to follow. That's the only way to put it. They had to follow. Its camera system wasn't perfect, but it was really good for the first shot at it, right? Um, and that control scheme. I mean, we still kind of use that concept, right? That 360-degree analog control scheme. Like we have never gotten away from that. We've never got away from that. We still use the same movements to ground pound in modern Mario games for the most part, don't we?
So many of the moves that are in
Yeah.
the most recent 3D platformers, Mario platformers, that is.
Right.
Most of them all came from this game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wall
Outside of
jumping,
the
double jump, long jump. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
it's all the
So
same.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Well, at least they followed that mantra
No,
because
well,
other companies did not.
I know that's very very true. They sure did. They sure did. So it's really just it's hard to understate, overstate. This is an important game. If you've never played it, go play it. I will be honest. I never played the DS remake, and I never opened my copy of Mario All Stars. I still have it sealed. So the Nintendo 64 version is still my only version. Are the other versions worth it at all? Anyone?
Absolutely. I can't speak to the the handheld version, but the All Stars version, it's true to the old one with some small improvements. I couldn't tell you what they are. I do think the camera definitely got improved. But I played the hell out of that as soon as it came out, and I got it. And 64, it lived up. I mean, even now, I still love going to that game and playing it,
Right.
which isn't
The
something I can
D,
normally say about old games.
yeah, the DS version was solid for its time.
It was kind
Considering
of a
the
remix. It was a remix, wasn't it? It's not.
yeah, and right, and the DS didn't have a joystick, so it used stylus controls for movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was harder, but you know, considering the power of the DS, it was a pretty solid conversion. But yeah, you can play it on any number of systems now, with it being on the, the Switch Online stuff and the some of the old releases.
Very, very true. Well, before I move on to our other topic for today, anything anyone else wants to bring up about Mario 64?
Yeah, I got a question for you guys. How long did you say would you think it took you guys to beat the game?
Oh my god, I haven't the slightest clue. It's funny because I don't think about that. Like I would tell you that it took forever because I was a teenager when we did it, but we've learned time and time again that when I think that it's in all actuality like a 4 hour game. I don't know. Did you look up how long this is? Like genuinely?
No, I just have it memorized.
Okay, how long is this
So
game?
the so depends on how many stars you go for, right? So
Right?
the current 120 star world record is 1 hour 36 minutes.
Okay, but that's what speedrunners do. What's normal? Do we know?
I mean, it's probably got to be.
10 hours, 12
I mean, it's
hours?
got to be 10 to 20. If you're going for 120 stars, yeah, it's probably going to be around 20. I think if you're coming into the
I would
game.
probably estimate 20 hours, at least for me, when I first beat it. Just there were a lot of stars that I would try over and over and over and over again.
And in a
So
lot of
how
cases, there's no GPS saying, "Hey, go here to get the star." You got to find it. Um,
Yep.
so first playthrough is probably always going to be inflated.
so so how long to beat.com, right? Where people, we crowdsource this information. Main story, so your minimum amount of stars. What is the minimum amount to beat the game? I don't
Well,
remember.
depends. 70. If you're not glitching, it's 70 stars.
Okay. So
But
just main story is 12. 12 is main story. Full completion is 20 is the average. So
look at us estimating like pros.
I know. Look at that. Look at that. But you said 1 hour 36 minutes is the record now for speedrunning.
That's the 120 star.
That's
The se-
crazy.
the 70 star is like 46 minutes, I think.
That's crazy. I've
And
watched people do that. It just blows my mind. Yeah, it just blows my mind. Speedrunning
oh
blows my mind every time.
yeah, no, it's like a foreign language. You can't understand it. The with glitches, the zero, you can beat the game without collecting any stars, and it's world records 6 minutes 16 seconds, which is
What? What?
yeah,
You can beat the game without any stars.
Yeah.
yeah. Most of the stars are there to get through certain Bowser doors,
Yeah.
and with the backwards long jump, you're able to circumvent that
Jump
if
right
you're
past them.
very very skilled and very very lucky.
That's insane. I don't know if I've ever watched a 6 minute run. I'm gonna have to do that when we're done.
Well, Another fun fact, I don't know if you noticed this, Ryan, but the world record holder seems to hold 0, 1, and 16 stars as the top in the world, and then second and 70, and not listed in the 120s in the top 20.
So he does not care about
Oh,
getting all the
he's
stars.
23
Oh,
in the 120 stars, but you know, top of the leaderboard for at least the glitched runs.
Yeah,
there you go. I
pretty
don't do
intense.
I don't do stars since that guy. I don't do stars at all. Awesome.
I,
That's
uh, I did prepare a haiku about Mario 64.
all right. Take the floor.
Great. Gotta catch 'em all. Talking about stars, bro. It's a me, Mario.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. Yep, that's it. Do the snaps.
I love it.
Do you
I
love
love it.
flex? Do you love flexing your creative writing chops every time you come on this podcast?
You know, it gives me an outlet. So I appreciate the latitude.
he just he just sits there with a notebook and he writes haikus, hoping we'll invite him back to the podcast.
I have haikus about so many things.
I, I, but I believe you. I 100% believe you that they're solid haikus. Congratulations. So, and we've heard a few of them throughout the episodes. We'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the fact that it's our 200th episode. It's a milestone, Rob. 200. 200.
Yeah, only 100 more, and we can be like that movie.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was going to make that joke. That's great.
Beat you to it.
It's a milestone. 200 is an accomplishment. There's not a lot of podcasts that make it past like 10. I think there's a weird statistic like that. Like the majority of them are done after like 10 episodes. And here we've hit 200. So
You guys should be proud of yourselves.
I am. I mean, this is something that we sit down and do every week. Like that takes effort. That takes dedication. If I did it for recognition, I wouldn't have done it for this long because we definitely don't have a huge audience, but we have a consistent one, and I appreciate every one of you. But I do it for me because I really like learning things, and so I get to sit down every week. And I know I cheesily talk about this at my little let's go round table, but that's the honest truth. Like I get to sit down every week and learn something with purpose, right? I mean, I read books all the time, and we watch TV and podcasts and stuff like that, but that's just taking things in. Like sitting down to do this podcast every week is learning with purpose, and I really enjoy that, and we've been doing it now for 200 episodes. They haven't all been quite like this, right? We've had a few format changes, have we not, Rob?
No, it's exactly the same as it
It's
started.
exactly the same.
Listen to one and you'll know.
How many episodes did I script this out as like a variety show? Like two, three? Didn't remember in the beginning I tried
I don't
I
remember how many it was, but it was not very long.
I literally wrote the entire script. Like we read from a script for the entire episode, and it was more like skits or a variety show. Like we talked about topics, but remember the commercials? We used to do commercials for fake products.
Yep.
Yeah, Brian, do you remember? Do you listen? You've been around for most of the run, haven't you?
I've listened to many of the 200, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Would you skip?
1 through 200. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we
Don't worry, the
I,
chess episode was horrid.
the chess episode was okay.
Nah, that was the only one that I took lead on. That was that was rough.
Oh,
I'll give
you
him
did.
that. I don't blame anyone for skipping that one.
You did take lead on that one. When I started this podcast, I wanted to talk about the touchy feelies, right? Because my idea was that I wanted to talk about how video games have impacted people's lives, and things like this video game saved me from depression, and this video game I met my significant other playing Rocket League, and we got married. Like I wanted to talk about the feels of gaming. And then I realized I wasn't good at that. Like, and it was too hard to find that too. Like, that's something that if we ever build a large community, we could talk about. But when you're trying to do it yourself and find it in the void, it's really difficult. So then I started like doing topical stuff, right? So like we did Just Cause early on, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, did you know Just Cause is a real thing? And we talked about the real thing. We did democracy on video games, and we got to talk about how the mail in gaming industry transitioned to video games. And I found myself liking the history part more than anything. And then we just slowly leaned into that more and more and more until we got here, you know?
Speaking of the mail-in games, Dave, I'm still mad that we never did that Subterfuge game with all your friends.
You've never gotten to play Subterfuge with us?
Never. You talked about it. We were going to do this huge thing. We all down. Or I remember I downloaded the app or maybe it was on the computer. It was a program. I don't remember which it was, but I was so excited to try it out. I was playing on my own to learn it, and just never came to fruition.
Ryan, you ever think about Subterfuge anymore?
Regularly. That
Me
game is
too, actually.
phenomenal, and I so wish.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too. And I don't know about you, but every time I think about it, I also think about how it consumed us. And then I kind of like waver a little bit. And obviously, we waver on the we're not going to do this. Do you get that feeling sometimes?
oh, it's the game. It's like, okay, in theory, it's a game where you can log in twice a day, kind of plot out your moves, maybe chit chat a little bit, and then move on. And instead, it's like, okay, I'm going to plot out this move. I'm going to make a false alliance with this person, and then backstab them in precisely 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is the middle of the night.
It's so true. It is so
Such an
true.
alarm in the
And
middle
you
of
have to
the
no, you do. You have to set an alarm in the middle of the night to because like you have to like so you set your moves hours ahead of time, right? Because the moves across the map take hours. So like
It,
you
it
tell your
all plays out in
units
real time.
yeah,
Yeah.
it plays out in real time. So you tell your units to move from point A to point B, and it goes, okay, this move is going to take you 12 hours and 8 minutes, which is a lot of time in the middle. But then, like, immediately when that's done, you either need to be there to react to it, which you don't. I mean, the units just do themselves, but really you need to be there to react to your next move, right? Because the moment you make a move, someone else is going to make a move. Like, you may be there in 12 hours and 8 minutes, but lo and hold that you know that there is another guy who sent a slightly larger army there that's going to be there in 12 hours and 9 minutes, and you can't see that at first because you're limited point of view, but as everything starts to move closer and in directions, you start to have an idea of what's going on, so you have to react accordingly.
And
So
I'm saying, hey, Dave, don't worry. I'm sending all my troops across the map. It happens to go skirt a little close to your territory, but it's actually going the long way and it's attacking Rob. And then in the middle of the night, suddenly those ships change trajectory.
yeah, we should propose that again. The problem is the wife complaints every time we do it, right? Because every time we do it, all I ever hear is you guys are obsessed, you guys are obsessed, you guys are obsessed. But maybe we're at a point in our lives where they'll be okay if we're obsessed with something other than them. So it might be a good time. It might be a good time. Might be-
To be single.
Oh
It's
my
great.
god, it's I do. Rob, I'm not even kidding. I do sit and think about subterfuge sometimes. It's still on the phone. I'm flipping past it. I'm like, oh, I
I
wonder if
think
I
about
could.
subterfuge far more often than I think about the Roman Empire.
I was gonna say that's a Roman Empire.
God
I
damn
was
it.
gonna make the same joke. Oh my goodness, but it's been a good 200 episodes.
I know you guys like to put the calendar out sometime soon for 2025.
Yeah,
Um, what do you guys want to accomplish in the next year?
man, I just want to tell more good stories. I tell good
Love it.
stories, and I think not all of them are great. Let me be honest about that. Like, not all of them are great because one of the things that I did in the very beginning, I mean, that's a great question. One of the things I did in the very beginning is I pigeonholed myself with the concept of it has to be relevant to this week. And that doesn't always make it easy. It's not always easy to find a topic specific to this week because there are some weeks in the annals of video game history that nothing happens. and I have to really dig for something, or you know, those are you'll tend to find the topics on those weeks that are yearly. So like in the beginning of all things, they didn't have specific release dates. This game came out in 1972. This game came out in 1974. Usually when I do a game that has a year like that, it's because I can't find a game that specific week. So it's not always easy, and the topics aren't always good because I sometimes have to pick something, and that's something it's hard to find a lot of time or a lot of research on. And that's the other thing. When you do this weekly around your normal life, because this is not our only gig by any stretch of the imagination, sometimes I wish I had more time for it. There are some topics that I wish I could dig further into and do more for. That's it. I wish I had more time some weeks, but you do what you can with what you have. You know what I mean? So I just want to tell more good stories. I think there's a lot more good stories out there to tell. I think there's a lot more good stories to tell. Any on that topic, I ask Rob all the time, but I haven't asked you. Is there anything we've never done that you want us to do?
Ever consider a game or ever consider an episode on like a game that ultimately was, canceled?
We did we did that once. Um, we did that once, and I've thought about bringing that back again. That's great. We did that once when I had to switch topics. I don't remember why we switched topics. Was that the week that I didn't do Kotor, Rob? That I had to pivot, and
Correct.
I did
Yep.
the Halo MMO Project Titan.
I don't remember what you did to replace it, but it was definitely KOTOR because we still haven't done it to this day,
No,
and you still haven't played it to this day, which
no,
blows my mind considering I'm the one who doesn't play games and I put the hours in.
yeah, I still haven't played KOTOR. I did do that once. We did Project Titan, which was a canceled Halo MMO. But you're right. I've never done it again. I've never done it again, and I have a few ideas for that for sure. So I am excited for some of next year. On that note, some of the games I've plugged in the schedule already are things I've wanted to do, like Kingdom Hearts, which I'm a fan of. Crazy Taxi, which I know Rob is a fan of.
Yes.
I'm really excited to do an episode on the history of pinball. Mostly because when I was researching a different topic, I found out that pinball was outlawed at one point in United States history, and I want to be able to learn about that and tell more about that story, and be able to tell about. There's a famous picture of pinball machines being busted up and thrown into like a harbor. So I'm excited to tell that story. I'm finally breaking out Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego next year. Rob still has no clue what that is.
Nope.
So, which that blows my mind. So there's some fun
As seen on
stuff.
Netflix.
Is it on Netflix now?
There's a new
New one?
adaptation.
Is there? Is
Yeah,
it any good?
quite good actually. As long as you're not too beholden to kind of what came before. But yeah,
Do they still have the
well,
catchy theme song music?
they have
Because
catchy music.
that was my
Yes,
introduction to acapella, so I always have a special love for that.
yeah. The Netflix Carmen Sandiego is an animated series. Where kind of with a younger um, Carmen, and yeah, it's well done. I did not like it at first because it was not the way I remember,
Right.
but pretty well done.
I plugged in some other stuff for us too. Going back to my heyday, we'll pick up Age of Empires. We'll pick up Battlefield. Last time we talked about Battlefield is before we were history based, so I'd like to talk about how that came to be. We're gonna finally gonna cover Gears of War next year because I mean that's a huge series for the Xbox that we've never touched so far. But I haven't really plugged in other than the history of pinball. Like I really enjoy some of those obscure topics, and I haven't plugged many of them in yet. I haven't figured it out. Like I have Phantasmagoria in there, which is kind of, I guess, obscure. And of course, we just talked about Eternity Darkness, which I think kind of fits. Oh, the Bandai Wander Swan. We're gonna do the Bandai Wonder Swan system. That's definitely obscure. That'll be fun. So I got some neat stuff on the whatchamacallit, and still plenty of weeks I haven't figured out yet. I'm not. I mean, I won't. I typically wait till September or October to finalize my schedule for the next year, so I got plenty of time to fill it in. So if you have suggestions, anyone listening out there, let me know. Yep.
Yeah, you could do a poll of your Patreon
That's
subscribers and let them vote on a couple, some of the weeks that you're not sure on.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So join the Patreon and become part of the poll. Uh Rob, 200. You good? You excited?
For 200 more?
You're still here.
Yeah, 199 episodes later.
199 episodes later, you are still here. So, um awesome. Well, I'm excited. Ryan, you've been here for 6 of them. Those are good odds. That's
Here's to six
3%.
more.
Isn't that 3%? Did I do that math correctly?
You'd think math would be my strong suit.
It's not mine in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Well, Ryan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us for 200.
Happy to be here.
And Mario, which you called a long time ago. Always happy to have you with us. Rob, thank
See?
you for being here for 200. You've stuck with it.
And thank you, Dave, for putting on 200 episodes. Well, 199, but again, the chess one.
Yeah. That's exactly right. So, all right. Well, on crap, we need to do a whole bunch of other stuff. Great. Well, there are 299 other episodes for you to check out. And of course, if you want to do so, you can go to our website, which is www.memorycardlane.com. From. I was about to say .from, but it's .com. Rob, what else can people do at www.memorycardlane.com?
Well, you can find a link to all of our previous episodes. Maybe you want to listen to some of the other 199. You can find the calendar of future episodes, though not next quite 2025, but you can find what we have planned for the rest of this year. Maybe put a little insight into what you have knowledgeable, or maybe you want to come hang out like Ryan does and just talk about the games and have fun. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us, get access to ad-free and unedited episodes of our versions of our episodes. Weird. And you can also find links to our social media. I am on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor. Dave.
I'm on various platforms as David is wrong, and Ryan hides from his children online, so he doesn't have screen names. So it's true.
You got it. 100%.
Smart. Smart play.
Each week, we tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a console, technology. It's just got to be something relevant. And as I already talked about, my favorite part is that I get to sit down, do some research, learn something new, and in turn teach you something new. So, in celebration of that beautiful cycle of teaching and learning, we like to talk about in a roundtable what we learn each week. So, Ryan, as our guest, I will start with you. What did you learn today?
I learned that there were originally 32 levels and we only got to play 15. I want the other half
No.
because I just feel like, if the game was released now, that would all be DLC. So give it to me.
I know. I was thinking that too. Like, where is the other bunch of levels? Like, did they use it in a different Mario? Did they just cut it? Like, I want to know too, but I couldn't find anything. So sorry. Rob, what did you learn today?
I would have to say, I think my favorite part is definitely the where Boo came from.
Yeah.
But I do kind of think it's interesting that the entire game started out on keyboard, and it really made me want a PC port. Like, I'm sure it's out there, but like an official Nintendo version, be able to play it from keyboard and mouse and see how difficult it would be compared to playing it on a controller. I don't know if I could.
Right.
I really don't, but I think
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to try.
Sure enough.
So, what about you, Dave?
I like the Boo thing too. That's definitely my favorite. But since you took it, I will take the fact that they started out on the Onyx workstation with modified Sega controllers. I'll take that as my anecdote. So, and that's it. Before I take it out of here and into next week, is there anything that either of you would like to add to today's episode?
Ryan, you first.
We didn't have time to talk about the opening screen with giant in-your-face Mario that you can then, pull and squeeze and stretch. That definitely taught me how to manipulate the joystick for sure.
There was a guy, and that was his job. And I actually know his name. It's Giles Goddard because I watched a whole interview with Giles. I got some of the anecdotes about the controllers and the Onyx workstations actually from Giles. and he was brought over, and that was like his entire job. And a lot of that came from Miyamoto would sit down and just like they like were testing, like they were just doing fun things to test on, and that was one of the things that was one of the things that they were messing around with. So Giles made that, in case you didn't know.
Thanks, Giles.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Giles.
thanks, Giles. And I'll take a moment first. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us for the sixth time. It's always a great time having you here and having someone that can keep Dave in check when I sometimes lose my grip. So thank you for that. And thank you to all of our listeners, Ryan included. It means the world to us to have you along. 200 episodes for those that have started from episode 1. And even if you've only listened to one episode and this is it still means the world to us to know that you're taking the time to learn about these games that have influenced everything that we game today.
That's right. All right, well, that wraps up our nostalgic journey through the creation and legacy of Super Mario 64. We've explored its innovative design, its groundbreaking gameplay mechanics, and the lasting impact that this iconic game has had on the world of gaming. We hope you enjoyed this leap into 3D as much as we did. But hold on to your controllers, because next week we're shifting gears from the whimsical world of Mario to something that couldn't be any different: the cheeky, controversial, and hilarious universe of Leisure Suit Larry. Released in 1987, Leisure Suit Larry pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in video games and became a cult classic for its humor and adult themes. We'll uncover the story behind its creation, delve into the unique challenges the developers faced, and discuss whether or not it has an enduring legacy. That's going to be a debate. So if you're ready to step into the shoes of Larry Laffer and explore one of the most notorious titles in gaming, join us again next week for another entertaining trip down memory card lane. Do the thing. Rob,
That's it. That's the
that's the
thing.
thing? You queued that up as the thing?
That wasn't me. Ryan covered it for us. He's always
Ryan,
on top of the game.
Ryan queued that up. Ryan, that was stellar.
Salute to you, my friend. That was
I,
perfect.
I got nothing. It's funny as shit.